All right. Well, thanks again for joining me on the webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about entering contributions in CDM Plus, and this really is kind of a getting started or introductory level webinar, just to really go over the very basics of getting your contributions in CDM Plus. CDM Plus has the tools to enable your church, your organization to really keep up with and understand the patterns of generosity and stewardship in your congregation, which also is a good indicator of the spiritual health of the church as well. But being able to do all of that kind of analysis and that understanding means that we know we've got good data in here in the first place. So we're going to talk about that beginning process of how we start to record contributions in CDM Plus, make sure those are connected to donors correctly, and we're able to balance those out and produce statements for folks at various points in the year to let them know where they are with their contributions. There's certainly a lot more to the contributions program than what we're going to cover today, but certainly we'll look forward to getting to those later. Today we just want to really hit some of the basic pieces of contributions in CDM Plus. So we're going to look at just the basic tools of it. It starts with giving funds. What are the various ministries, the various missions that folks would make contributions to, and making sure we have those entered as giving funds. If we have our contributions program tied to CDM Plus accounting, make sure that money that comes in for those giving funds then gets reported to the correct income accounts. We'll look at how giving units get set up for households and for individuals, how those connections get made. Then actually look at the batch process of recording and entering contributions. Talk a little bit about how we handle the situations of just having loose offerings that we don't really have a way of knowing how to tie those to a particular giving unit, a household, or an individual, and how we might work with visitor gifts. So somebody visits your church and makes a contribution, how we might record that, and a couple of options that we have there. We'll look at the daily report of contributions, which is the report that we use after we've entered a batch of contributions and gotten that ready, the report that we then produce to, one, have a record of what was entered, and two, as kind of a double check to make sure that the information we've entered is correct. And again, if we have CDM Plus contributions tied to the CDM Plus accounting program, then what's that last step to go ahead and post those contributions to the ledger? So without further ado, let's get going. Okay, so in CDM Plus, the giving fund is one of the key pieces, and those are created from contributions of the program, contribution setup menu. So when I click there, then that opens up my contribution setup window. And so this is also where I note that if we have CDM Plus accounting, well, do I have those two things linked together? Do we connect the memorial gifts program? And do we need Canadian receipts? But what we want to do to set up giving funds is this button in the lower left-hand corner here to look at our giving funds. So I'm going to click on that button, and that opens up the giving funds window. So in this, we have an alphabetical list of giving funds. And so if I need to add a new one, I can certainly click Add here at the bottom. I can set a giving fund to be the default so that as I'm entering contributions, one fund will come up automatically for me. Certainly this would be the most commonly used fund. You can see in my particular database here, I'm a little bit behind in that I'm still using General Fund 2017. But this is the giving fund description. The checkbox in this next column, in this column here, is whether or not a gift made to this giving fund is tax deductible. Again, I'm able to set a default account, I can mark, a default giving fund. I can mark giving funds as being inactive when they're no longer in use. That way, when I'm working in my contribution entry, I don't have a cluttered list of funds because I'm going to not see the ones that I've marked here as inactive. These next two columns have to do with linking CDM Plus contributions to CDM Plus accounting. If I have contributions and accounting connected to one another, then when I enter a gift to a particular giving fund, then we also specify in the accounting program, well, what's the income account that that giving fund is associated with. So for example, when I record a contribution to General Fund 2017, then those contributions automatically get booked in the accounting to account number 4000, the Sunday worship offering. So we connect a giving fund to an income account if we have CDM Plus contributions and accounting connected. The fee account is related to online giving. And again, online giving is not something that we're going to get into in the course of this class. But if folks are making a gift online, they're using a credit card, and there are merchant processing fees associated with that contribution. What expense account in the accounting system receives those expenses? Where do we book those? And that's what the fee account column is. But certainly what we want to make sure is that we have the fund descriptions that we need. Mark the ones inactive that we're not ready to delete yet, but that we no longer use and don't need cluttered up as we're doing data entry. And marking one giving fund, the most commonly used one, as a default, just to save an extra step, and making sure we have our giving funds mapped to income accounts. When I'm done with giving funds, I can click close and come back, and I'll close this window. The next piece of contributions program that's important is the giving unit. And so one way to come at these is certainly within contributions from program, contributions. I can open up giving unit records, and I can see the information for a particular giving unit. So I'm going to go ahead and do the find here for my giving unit last name equal to Disney. Click find, and he brings up that result. And so I have here a giving unit with last name, mailing name, salutation name. If this person receives statements by email, we check this box on. Again, providing statements, doing email statements is a class that we will do later on in the year, but I'm not going to get into that in the class today, but know that that facility is there. We can mark giving units as being inactive, and even have giving units that don't want to receive a contribution statement. One of the important things is that your giving unit here is typically attached to an address record in your membership database, so that the information about my members, the people who make up my community in CDM Plus, is linked to their giving history, their giving work, and their contributions. So I have this piece in CDM Plus membership. It connects to this piece in CDM Plus contributions. Again, we're keeping all our information tied together so that I have minimal data entry. I don't have to make changes in one place and then another. So what you see here in this box is the connection to the address information. See, somebody's put a question up from somebody who works for the educational side of their ministry. And yes, contributions aren't just for churches, so I can use contributions as people are making donations to various ministries, whether it's a school that the church operates, other things like that, then yes, the contributions module works just as well for that. Let's see, another question. Does the donor need to be in the listing before contributions can be entered, or can the donor be entered when doing the contribution record? You can actually enter donors when we get into looking at the batch contribution entry here in just a few minutes. We'll see where we can enter new giving units if we don't have one already. There's a couple of places, and this is a good segue to what I wanted to talk about next. I may or may not enter my giving units through this giving unit record interface. Again, I have the information about the people that make up my community in CDM Plus membership. So I have address and individual records over there that then get connected to giving unit records. Well, if I'm in, let's just say address records, say I'm going to enter a new household. So let me get an address record window up here. And I'm going to add a new household to the CDM Plus membership. This household is the Johnsons. It's Mary and James. And they live at 367 Big Tree Lane in Big City, Kentucky. And I can enter their individual information. When I go to save this new address record, then I'm going to be prompted, would you like to add giving units to this address? So when I'm putting in that membership information, when I'm putting in new households, new individuals, CDM Plus says, hey, you've got contributions as well. Would you like to go ahead and create the giving unit for this household? And I can click yes, and he brings me to the giving unit tab of the address record. Shows me that I now have a giving unit for Mary and James, and that I've also connected those two individual records with that giving unit as well. When we go to talk about online giving through Engage, having individuals connected to giving units becomes very important. But now I've done everything I need to do. I've created a new address, I've entered this new household, I have the new people, and CDM Plus prompted me to create the giving unit as well. So I can click Save at that point. But coming back to the question that was asked, as I'm putting in batches and I'm looking and I have a check in front of me that's from someone that I did not have in my database, I'm able to enter that giving unit at that time to do that on the go. Another question is, my church uses CDM Plus. The church also owns a farm. So contributions to the farm could be inserted in for the church, or would a separate account have to be created? You don't have to create a separate account, and I don't know how you do the accounting or the financial reporting for the farm versus the church. That's a different question, but let's assume that it's all under the umbrella. It's the same tax ID number. I'm just as likely, if I'm a member of the church, I'm just as likely to make a donation to the church as I am to the farm. Then really, contributions to the farm are really just recorded as a separate giving fund. And so that's how I'm able to keep donations that are for the church separate from donations that are made for the farm. Then when we talk about CDM Plus accounting, again, there's a webinar coming up on that and creating your chart of accounts, making sure that we keep those fund balances and the uses of those funds separate becomes a function of CDM Plus accounting. But I've got this underlying piece that's important in contributions to make sure that I'm able to record the contributions separately. So yeah, you do not have to create a separate account. You would want to create a separate giving fund for the farm. We have contributions as of yesterday, but the accounting isn't live yet. Do I need to wait on setting up the accounting links, or can they be set up before they go live? The question I don't know the answer to yet is how long would we be waiting? Certainly we can go ahead and set up the contributions. We can go ahead and set up the giving funds now. And I think that's the approach I would take. Let's go ahead and set up the giving funds. What are people going to be giving to? So make sure I have those, and I can go ahead and start recording those contributions. And then I can come back later, go back into that giving funds window where we were, and I can make changes to those giving funds and add the accounts once accounting gets set up. Now, I'll probably have some manual work to do to catch up the accounting program with contributions that I've already entered, but you don't have to hold up the entry of contributions waiting on your CDM Plus accounting to go live. So that has covered giving units and giving funds, and then the question becomes, well, how do I bring all of that together and actually enter the contributions into my CDM Plus database? The easy way to enter multiple contributions, and in fact, I generally recommend that even if you're doing a single contribution, that we just do it this way. But certainly if there are multiple contributions going into a deposit, then I'd like to enter those contributions as a batch. So under Program Contributions, I'm going to go to Batch Contribution Entry. And that opens up my Batch Contribution Entry window. So I can actually come back through here and look at previous batches that I have entered if I need to come in here and make a correction, add something, subtract something from a batch. I can come in here and make modifications to them. But what we want to do for today is we've got a brand new set of contributions that we need to enter. So I'm going to click the Add button, and that opens up this Batch Contribution Setup window. So he's saying, okay, we're going to create a batch with batch code 1, and he defaults me to, for the deposit date, the most recent Monday, and for the contribution date to the most recent Sunday. I can certainly use my calendar icon over here and change those as I need to, but he sets those up again. Most commonly what people do is the deposits made on the most recent Monday from offerings that were given on the most recent Sunday. So we've set that up for you. What event was this set of contributions associated with? Was this the Sunday morning worship service? And again, these are events that you set up in your database. You know, CDM Plus is built so that you can configure it to talk the way you talk, use the language that you use. I'm going to enter this batch for the Sunday morning worship service. If you have CDM Plus contributions connected with accounting, well, what's the asset? What's the bank account that these contributions are going to be deposited to? So I can choose the account picker icon there. Well, these are going into my checking account, number 1000. I select that and say OK. One of the controls that I have to make sure that I've entered the data correctly is if somebody has already done a count on these contributions and you have a total of what this batch should be, then I can enter that total here and use that as a way. So for this batch, we know that we have contributions that total $450. So I'm going to type in 450. And when I tabbed, I got a new batch code, which I didn't need. So I'm going to click on the red X here and delete that. And he says, do you want to do this? And I say yes. And then I say okay. Now we're off and ready to enter the batch. Just a little bit of what we've got. Notice that here in this corner of the window, I have the amount that I entered as my total. CDM Plus is going to keep a running total of what I've entered so far and show me what's remaining, and hopefully I'm going to get to 0, and this is going to be in balance. I don't have the control methods enabled, but there are also ways to provide control numbers that provides another level of control. Have I entered this information correctly? Some of them are complicated. They require that you have numeric giving codes. Generally, I have just used the amount, but you can use a control number that counts the number of contributions as well. Again, just another way of keeping up, making sure that what I'm entering, I've entered correctly. I think I've got a question up on the chat room. This question, if there's time later, I have 2 giving units set up for 1 household giver. How do I delete one or combine the 2? Yes, remind me when we get to the end, and I'll go over that. It's actually a very simple thing to transfer contributions from one giving unit to another, and then you can delete the one that you don't need to keep. So I'm back in my batch contribution entry, and the buttons across the bottom, I've got my batch set up. I know that I'm going to be targeting $450 worth of contributions. I'm going to click multi-add. so that, when I click save, he'll come back and give me the next blank window again. My first box here is which giving unit made this contribution. And there are a couple of ways I can do this. I can start by typing in a name, and if I tab out, then he'll say, okay, well, here are the two giving units that I found. Well, this is Mike and Susan. So I'm going to double click to select them. What was the payment type? How did they make this contribution? Again, I can drop the list down and choose it, or if it's a check, I can start typing and tab out again. However the workflow is going to work best for you. What was the check number? $689. I'm going to tab into the total gift, and their gift was for $150. And notice, remember I had General Fund 2017 set up in the giving funds as my default? And so that's what CDM Plus has brought up here as the first giving fund. When I tab out of the total field, then the program updates the amount in that first giving fund to that amount. Now, sometimes people will make a contribution, they'll write one check, and there are actually multiple gifts involved. So the Disneys may have intended that just $100 of this gift was for the general fund, but that they were giving another $50 for the general missions work of the church, the general missions fund of the church. So I'm going to change the general fund amount to 100 and tab out. So he's now keeping, okay, you've still got 50 to go. Choose the giving fund that goes to. So I choose the missions fund. So that takes care of their contribution. I click save. Now he presents, he records that contribution in the batch up here in the upper left, and he's back for me to enter the next contribution. The other thing I can do is I can click list and open up a list of all the giving units. I do see that I have a question. I want to get through this, and then I'll come back to that. So I can see the list of all the giving units. Well, this gift was from Bill and Patty Bryant, so I double click on them, and he put that giving unit in. Again, the payment type was a check. It was check number 3877 for $100. That was for General Fund 2017 for $100, and save that. So you can see I've entered gifts for $150, for $100, and still up here, CDM Plus is keeping tabs in this batch. You say you've got $450 worth of contributions. So far you've entered $250. You have $200 yet to go. Check this question real quick. When it's one payment to two different accounts, should notations go in the comment section? If we're really talking about two different accounts, and by that I mean, do I have contributions that are going into two different asset accounts or two different bank accounts? For example, at my church, we have a separate checking account for the general fund, and we have another checking account for the building fund. I would enter those in two separate batches because I have two different asset accounts involved. So again, it's really two separate deposits, and my advice is that you keep your batches corresponding to your deposits, because when I go to post those to the ledger, I want that deposit to show up as one entry when I go to reconcile the bank account. If it's to two different giving funds, then no, you can make whatever notes in this entry memo field that you want. Back up here again. Over here in the entry memo, I can enter reminders and text about the gift. This memorial note field, when we do the memorials class in a few weeks, we'll really get into this, how I tie a particular gift to gifts in memory of or in honor of a certain person or event or organization. But you can record whatever you need to here in the entry memo, but it's really sufficient if the gift covers two giving funds to just note in here, make sure that the gifts are allocated correctly to the giving funds here. And then if it is two different bank accounts, to do those as two separate batches. What you would get into is if somebody writes you one check and the destination really needs to go to another bank account, now we've got to do journal entries and make sure those transfers get made. Because again, I really want my batch contribution entry to correspond to a deposit to a given account. Do either of these notes carry over to the ledger? No, the entry memo or anything here in the memorial note stays in the contributions program. So you do have the connection from the ledger back to the contribution, back to the batch to be able to look at that though. So you don't lose the information. So I still have new contributions to enter. And so I've got a check in front of me and it's from the Zielinskis. So I type that name in and I tab out. I don't have that giver. So I'm going to add that person. So I click yes, I want to add that. Well, a giving unit has to be tied to a household. So I have to connect it to an address. Well, do I have any Zielinskis in my membership database? So I put that in, last name equal to Zielinski. He's asking me to select an address here and I click find. Well, I don't have any. So I'm going to come over here to the sidebar and I'm going to add this address record. And so like we saw earlier, he opens up an address record window for me. And I'm able then to type in the information from the check. This is John and Karen. Oh, where did they live? They lived at 655 Harold Lane. And they live all the way out in Stamping Ground, Kentucky. It was nice of them to come down and visit us in Big City. So John and Karen. Now I'm able to save that. That's what I'm doing already. There's the Zielinskis. So I'm going to enter their check, $46.77. They gave me a gift for $200. It's all for General Fund 2017. And I'm going to put a note on this memo that these were first-time visitors that made a substantial contribution. I want to remember that. So I'm going to click save that contribution. And now notice here as CDM Plus has been keeping track, my target was 450, I've processed 450, and yes, I'm at the end of my list, everything's in balance, we're good to go, so I'm going to click finish. And so now I've entered a batch, I've got my contributions entered. Let's see what questions. The question is, how is the giving code distinguished when you have numerous members with the same last name? Let's bring that giving code, let's open up that giving unit record. Well, I could do it right there on the contribution entry. Let's do that. Notice here that when I entered the Zielinskis, that the giving code that CDM Plus generated was the first 4 letters of their last name and then a number following that. So their giving code is ZYLI107, and it's this code that distinguishes the contribution entry. You might remember, let me pretend that I'm going to add another contribution here. When I first started out and I was entering a contribution for the Disneys, and I tabbed out, he actually opened up and said, hey, I've got 2 giving units by that name. Which one is this? And then gave me the opportunity to select it. Or if neither of them is correct, here again, I've got the link to add a new giving unit. So the distinction between giving units is based on giving code, not just on last name. I was using last name as my way to look up. Click cancel and get out of that. What if you have several deposits on the same date? When you go to post, it will combine the 2 deposits. Let me get to the, how do you add your goals in the contribution? That was, if you're talking about the target amount here on the batch contribution entry, that was when we did the setup. I clicked the add button, and when he opened up the batch contribution setup, that's this amount number that I'm entering for the batch. If you don't know ahead how much the 50 plus checks add up to, can you leave that target blank? Absolutely you can. Certainly there's other ways you can check that out, but if you have a system where somebody has counted these contributions ahead of time and you have a tally sheet that tells you what you should come up with, it's a way of keeping track and making sure you've entered things correctly. The other piece is you'd have a chance to review. Next thing we're going to look at is printing that daily report as a means of, one more way to check my work and make sure I've entered contributions correctly. Then the question about what if you have several deposits on the same date? When you go to post, it will combine the two deposits. It does do that posting based on deposit date. I love it when people ask me questions that I'm not really sure I know the answer to. Okay, and somebody says, I do deposits on the same day and they don't combine. I think it really does try to do by batch. It certainly does keep the assets separate in the posting as well. So once I've done this, I've got my batch entered. I can click my print button down here in the bottom. So I'm going to print this batch. And notice that the window he opens up is the daily report of contributions. He's already set the search for me because we're going to use the results from this batch contribution entry. So I can go to my report tab. I can do columns for various giving funds if I choose to, or I can just do a column for total only. I'm going to keep it that way. I can include memos and notes on this report by checking these boxes on. I can choose, do I want to sort this by giving unit code or by giving unit name? Do I want to page the report by event and by batch? I just have one batch and one event, so I'm going to keep it on no paging. Line numbers or no line numbers. So that's what I can do on the report tab. And on the format tab, do I want to include the giver code or just the giving unit name? How do I want to format the name? Do I want to use mailing name, salutation, last name first? Those kinds of things. Page setup, where I can determine, do I want to print this portrait or landscape? Then I can go ahead and print this. Let's go ahead and just do a refresh and use the refresh window here. Well, there's my daily report. And so I can see that I got these 3 contributions from these 3 donors that each total this amount. Here's my total that came in by check. If I had received cash contributions, that would be broken out down here as well. And then also my breakout by giving fund. So for this deposit, for this batch of contributions, we received $400 in gifts to the general fund. Remember, we had $50 in one gift to missions. My total $450, should balance with $450. And again, this is a report that I would generate to a PDF if you want to print it out on paper and save it in a notebook or file. I'm a big fan of just doing that electronically with PDFs, but this is a report that you want to maintain, that you want to keep and be able to go back and refer to. Looks like we got another question popped up. Somebody has a comment. Another way around is to post each deposit immediately after entered into batch contributions. Then the remaining batch will post as a separate ledger entry. That's true. If I had another batch to enter on this same day and even to the same batch, same bank account or same asset, I could go ahead and post this batch now. And then if I came back in and entered another batch, well, then I'd have a new batch to post. So let's go ahead and look quickly at how I now go ahead and make this posting to my ledger. Actually record the deposit that's been made. So under program contributions, down here near the bottom is post contributions to ledger. And that'll open up this post contributions window. He shows me all of the deposit dates that I've not yet posted. Well, here's the batch that we entered today, June 25th. I'm going to post these to the ledger with a transaction date of today. I can preview the posting report and say, okay, we'll see what we're going to post this to this checking account, 1,000. And then I'm going to do, for the income side of this posting, $400 to account number 4,000, $50 to account number 4110. Again, I have various report options, but this all looks good. So I'm ready to go ahead and post this to the ledger. So I click post. He opens up a report destination window. I'm just going to print it up to the screen for now. You see he says posting is complete, and he gave me my contributions posting report here. I'm going to click OK. And there's my report again. You may print these or keep the PDF on file as a reference about this journal entry. It depends on the standards and processes and procedures that you have in place. Oops, I made a mistake. And I've already posted this to the ledger. Well, I can get out of that. I can come back into contributions, go back to post contributions to ledger. And I have a tab here to unpost contributions. So if I need to come back in here and correct an error that I made, I can select that entry, unpost it, go back in, make the changes, and repost that entry. So even after I've posted to the ledger, as long as I'm still in an open accounting period, I can unpost that entry, make corrections, and put it back. That's all that I had planned to cover. I appreciate good conversation and good questions. Thank you. I appreciate Sue is asking, what are your suggestions for handling gifts from visitors? And I did intend to cover that. There are a couple of ways to do this. Now, people handle visitors differently on the membership side of their database. And I've certainly visited churches where I've made a contribution, and then at the end of the year, I've gotten a contribution statement from them. If you want to do that, then we need to go ahead and creating a giving unit for that visitor, just like you saw me do for the Zielinskis. And I noted they were first-time visitors. I went ahead and created a giving unit for them. And that created an address record, a household in the membership database. So I'm actually then looking to the membership piece to keep up with the information that these folks are visitors. If you don't want to do that, if you don't necessarily need to provide a statement unless a visitor returns for a second time, perhaps, and makes a second gift, you can create a giving unit that's kind of a catch-all. And I usually recommend starting this giving unit name or giving unit code with 3-letter Z's so that it'll always kind of sort to the end of a list. So you might create a giving unit with the code ZZZ visitor. And you can actually do that when you go to create a giving unit and you go to add one. Then I can create visitor gifts and I can make that giving code ZZZ visitor. So that then becomes kind of a catch-all. So if you do this and you record a gift from a visitor, again, you've got contact information, you've got a check with address information on it, then I would certainly use the entry memo field on that gift and record that information. So record that this is a gift from, and put the name, put the address so that you have that contact information. If they come back the second time and make another gift, then I would certainly advocate at that point, create the giving unit for them, transfer that earlier gift from ZZZ visitor to the new giving unit and move on that way. You can do the same thing for loose offerings. So Sunday morning offering comes in and you have some amount of cash that you don't know where it came from, you don't know who gave it, you have no way to tie it to a giving unit. We can create a giving unit called ZZZ Loose and record your loose offerings that way. I would generally, most churches will have a separate income account on the accounting side for that. So there might be a 4100 account for loose offerings so that I kind of have those things booked separately or they show up separately on my financial reports. But you can create those kind of catch-all giving units. There's an update on an earlier question. This is about how do I merge giving units if I have actually the same person recorded as two different giving units. Then yes, if folks are using Engage for online giving, it could be that we didn't have email addresses up to date in our database. And what happened as a result of that was somebody created their Engage account and we created new address, individual, and giving unit records for them. Let me bring the Disneys back up. But you were asking earlier about how easy is it to merge. I'm going to go ahead and use, so I've got Mike and Susan Disney here. I can tell in the sidebar that they have contributions because I have this jump to contributions under the Go section. So I'm going to jump to their contribution records. And that opens up the contribution maintenance window with all of the gifts from that giving unit. That's what that jump does. So with a contribution highlighted, I have now under Due in this sidebar the option to transfer. So I can click the transfer button, which opens up this transfer window. Well, I have a choice here now. I can transfer all contributions for that giving unit. I can just transfer the one that I selected. Where is it going? So I click list and I would double click. Well, this actually needed to go to Robin. So I could do that. I have the checkbox to go ahead and delete that source giving unit when I'm done. He tells me what he's going to do. You know, if I click OK and I check that box on, he says, okay, if you do this, you're going to transfer 13 contribution records and you're going to delete one giving unit record. So that's how easy it is. You know, if you've got that situation where that duplicate giving unit got created, you need to move the contributions, then use that transfer button on the contribution maintenance window to do that. So I'm going to click cancel here because I don't actually want to transfer Mike and Susan's contributions to Robin. I appreciate you all hanging with me to talk about contributions. Certainly do not hesitate as you're working in contributions or any part of CDM Plus to call 1-800-633-9581. That's our support number. Our support technicians are well versed in contributions and accounting. They can certainly help you out if you get stuck. They can help you with setup as well. If you don't need an immediate response, you can also email support@cdmplus.com, that's support@cdmplus.com, and get questions answered that way as well. We try to respond to those within one business day. If there are no other questions, I'll kind of pause here a moment and just wait, but if there aren't any other questions, again, thank you for joining us today. Again, I'm Dean Phelps. It's been my pleasure to work with you this afternoon. Hope you have a good rest of your day.